Welcome, everyone, to our parent panel, Parenting Through and Beyond Cancer and AYA Survivorship panel. For those of you who are brand new to Bright Spot Network, a little bit about who we are and what we do. We support parents with cancer who are diagnosed during pregnancy or while raising young children. And this is a community for parents with any cancer diagnosis, any stage, as well as for partners and families and even their kids. The mission of Bright Spot is to bring these parents together to create community because we know how isolating this can be, as well as provide parents with the tools and resources they need to talk to kids and support them through a parent's cancer diagnosis. We offer many different programs, including our free book program, Bright Reads, our free curated art box called Bright Box, a small financial grant, virtual support groups. So, for parents who are in active treatment, for parents who are in survivorship, for partners, we have groups for bereaved partners and a few other special groups as well. We have connections for kids once a month. We have virtual teddy bear clinics, ongoing webinars and wellness workshops, family resource navigation to connect you to very specific resources, as well as a wealth of free downloadable web resources on our website. Feel free to follow us on Instagram to just stay up to date on our programs and new resources, including heads up, we'll be launching a new coloring book in just a few weeks. So stay tuned to that. I also wanted to let everyone know about a partnership program we have going on right now with Triage Cancer that is specific to parents navigating a metastatic cancer diagnosis. And as part of this program, you can participate in 4 webinars. We have different educational materials, including a brand new practical guide for parents who are navigating stage 4 or advanced cancer, as well as free books, the Bright Box, and curated navigation services. So you can scan that QR code to learn more and to sign up for this program. As far as today's panel, feel free to type in any questions in the Q&A box. We're going to hold all questions until the end, but it's perfectly fine to enter your question when you have it, just so you don't forget it. We'll be sending a survey in the follow-up email. I'll also drop a link in the chat near the end. We would really love your feedback. It's a pretty short survey, and it just helps us to know what resonates with you and if you have ideas for upcoming parent panels or webinars. This webinar is being recorded, so if you need to step away, that's fine. We'll send you the recording, and eventually it will live on our website with all of the other webinars and parent panels that we've done. We're really excited to be partnering with Stupid Cancer on today's parent panel. Our moderator is Bridget Fresquillo, and she is the program manager with Stupid Cancer. Bridget has spent nearly 20 years of her career in the nonprofit world developing and implementing evidence-based psychosocial programming to young adults, children, and families impacted by cancer and bereavement. Her heart lies deeply in this space and always will. Bridget lives in Seattle, Washington with her husband Daniel, their puppy Griffey, and 2 cats who prefer to remain anonymous, as most cats do. So, Bridget, I'm going to let you take it from here and tell us a little bit about Stupid Cancer.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to virtually meet you, see you, have you here. Thank you, Carissa, for the introduction. Like Carissa said, I'm Bridget Friscio. I'm the program manager with Stupid Cancer, and I'm really, really happy to be here with you all today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Stupid Cancer, our mission is to be the leader in the AYA cancer community by ending isolation and making cancer suck less. So typically, when we refer to the AYA cancer community for adolescents and young adults, we're including folks who are ages 15 through 39. But something we always say is that we don't check IDs. And so if you are over 39, that certainly does not disqualify you from any programming. We serve patients, survivors, caregivers, advocates, healthcare professionals, and nonprofit professionals. And truly, our goal is to create community and end isolation for anyone who is in the AYA cancer space. And we have a number of different programs, which I am just briefly going to state. I would love to share more, but you can please look at the Stupid Cancer website, follow us on social media so you can learn a lot more. But our programming includes digital and in-person meetups, which are just purely social experiences for AYAs impacted by cancer. We have Stupid Cancer Stories, which is a multimedia storytelling platform to be able to share about your cancer experiences and use your voice to empower yourself and others. Our discussion series is a education-based program where we take a deep dive into the most important topics faced by the AYA cancer community, and then we engage in a small group discussion about lived and shared experience within that topic. And then we have CancerCon, which is our largest flagship program. It's the biggest gathering of the AYA cancer community in the country. It's an amazing opportunity to meet people from around the country, connect, gain amazing resources. We also have an extensive resource guide on our website, as well as some special initiatives that we tackle, including a health equity initiative and our access to care initiative. All right. Well, with all of that, my goal today is to create and hold space for our amazing panelists that we have here today. And hopefully, you'll hear less from me and more from them. I am here to ask questions and then hold the space for their answers, which will hopefully feel really resonating and connecting with all of you in the audience. So, without further ado, I would love to go ahead and introduce our panelists. And this is in no particular order, just how I see you all on my screen. But Virginia, if you would like to go first and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Virginia, and I live in Lexington, Kentucky. Go Cats! I'm a UK fan and alumni. I am 39 years old right now, and I was 37 when I was diagnosed with stage 2 non-Hodgkin lymphoma. In my mesentery, so I didn't know that you had lymph nodes in your stomach, and mine was in my mesentery, and my son was 3. And so his birthday is May, so he's 5 now. We just celebrated his birthday, and so, whoo, that was very special. And Bright Spot, I learned about them, I think it was a month after. So I finished chemo. I was diagnosed September of 2024. And then I finished chemo January of 25. And I think I started a survivorship group February. And all I did was cry for a couple months. And that support group was so helpful. And then my son is done. We had all the books and then the little bright box too. And so it's just been a lifeline. So the support groups have been super helpful. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Virginia. Nate, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name's Nate Edwards. I'm from Sweet Home, Oregon. This is it's a small town. I live on a farm, about 12 acres and about 100 animals right now. So I was diagnosed with testicular cancer back in 2020, heart of COVID. Had a few treatments there into 21, and then just been under surveillance since then. I have 2 kids, one before and one after cancer. Um, Struggled a lot with fertility, which is a topic that means a lot in the grand scheme of things here. But my kids are 3 and 7. So and I'm a work at home dad, so I have them all the time, and I just love it. So I just figured I could bring a male perspective to it, because it's not always uh, it's not always the dads that that are home, and so I have a little unique perspective on that as well. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Nate. Tracy, would you like to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Tracy Suffolk, and I live in Northern Virginia outside of DC. I have 2 daughters, and I was diagnosed at 4 months postpartum with my second daughter. I was 36 years old. My older daughter at the time was 4, so today they're now just turned 9 actually on Sunday, my oldest, and my youngest is 4 herself and will be turning 5, going to kindergarten this year. I had my breast cancer diagnosis and went through my surgery, my treatment, chemotherapy, reconstruction, all of that, and immediately a year later was diagnosed with stage 2 tongue cancer and had to go through pretty extensive surgery, radiation, all of that. So I, as of June, will have hit no evidence of disease for 3 years and continue to just maintain all of the breast cancer protocol right
Thank you, Tracy. And Lisa.
Hi, thank you. I am Lisa Orr. I live in Reading, Massachusetts, which is 20 minutes north of Boston. I was diagnosed in 2019 with stage 2B triple negative breast cancer. I was 31 at the time, and my kids, I have two boys, they were 3 and 1.5 at the time of my diagnosis. Um, and they're now, sorry, my older son is 11 and my younger son is about to be 9 in a month. So I'm 7 years out. I feel like one of the reasons why I am still here is because of the resources that I found, and I feel like I am here to share my story so others feel less alone in what they're going through. So I'm just so thankful for both Stupid Cancer and Bright Spot Network for having a panel like this so that people out there can kind of see themselves in our stories and know that you're not alone in what you're navigating.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you all for introducing yourself. It's really great to have you here. What we'll be doing today is I'll present questions one at a time, and really the goal is to not only for you all individually as panelists to be able to share your experiences with the question, but to connect with each other as well. And so if you hear something that really resonates with you as a panelist that someone else said, would love to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe something happened to you that was really similar, maybe very different, like all of the things we would love to hear. One of the most important things within a cancer experience is that we really don't compare and we just hold space for everyone's unique perspectives and unique experiences as we resonate with them or as we find them to be different from our own. So hopefully our audience will experience the same. But our first question today for the four of you, and please just feel free to unmute and answer whenever you'd like. I don't want to have to call on you, so it feels more organic, hopefully. But our first question is, what are some of the lasting or the late-term effects of cancer that have impacted your parenting?
I before we started, you were like, what questions? And I was like, this one I just have such like a visceral body reaction to because I want it to not, but it always will. And so I wanted to like, because I'm 16 months out, post chemo, post treatment. Next January will be the 2 year mark of no scans. And this one, my son starts kindergarten August 12th, and my next scan is August 13th. And so, so it's just kind of like that space of, it'll always be there. There'll always be that definite date for me of like September 2024, like life before cancer, life after cancer that just affects everything. And parenting through cancer and just that question of like, gosh, like the gratitude like is sometimes overwhelming. I remember very early on, bald, going through chemo, just I was like, I have to drop him off at preschool. And my husband was like, please don't. And I was like, I just have to. And so I would get the gumption and they were okay with me dropping off late. And I remember coming back and I was folding his socks, and just that memory of like sobbing of like I get to still fold his socks. And that still catches me, like I get to still do this. I get to still, just that gratitude is wonderful, but also just overwhelming and sometimes not convenient too. And so just all those pieces of like, there's so many lasting effects. Yes, the fatigue and then your hair growing back. And then, but yeah, you just have to speak to the gratitude and how it's like overwhelming at times.
Yeah, thank you. It's so lovely to hear the perspective of yes, like these are the lasting effects from my scanniversaries and all of these pieces and my cancerversaries, and these are the emotional lasting impacts as well. Everything is so intricately tied together. Like the two really can't exist without the other. So thank you for sharing that, Virginia.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Virginia shared. I think for me, the emotional side effects are kind of the ones that stand out to me first and foremost. The fear of recurrence, kind of the overall awareness of how quickly life can change. I feel like that isn't something you think about unless you are faced with something like this. And I feel like as a parent, that really kind of makes me feel a little more protective over my kids. And I'm wondering if anybody else kind of like feels that way. Um, and not only just protective over them, but like protective over like everyday moments and like little things that I just want to like hold on to even tighter. Um, but one thing I will say is, and I don't know, my brain when you said long-term effects went kind of to family planning, because I know that's often a thing that comes up for people depending on if you already I mean, I happen to have two healthy children when I was diagnosed, but I always had it in my head that I would have three kids, and that was always kind of like our plan. And so opening up your mind and knowing that that has to shift a little bit because of what you've been through. And again, everybody's kind of experience is different in that aspect. But that was something for me that was kind of hard to navigate. And it took years for me to kind of accept that, okay, I am so blessed. My family is complete to what it's going to be. And that's just kind of something I had to embrace at that point. But and then yeah, I just want to really quickly second Virginia, the positive, like the little moments that you stop and say, wow, I am here and I get to do this. And I do have to keep reminding myself that, like, if my kids won't go to bed and they ask for that like extra sip of water, don't get me wrong, there are still moments where I get a little frustrated, and I think that's normal too. But that is always top of mind. I stop and I'm like, I get to go get them another sip of water. I get to rub their back for another minute, and I'm gonna just take that for what it is.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Definitely always the balance between like the normal human frustrations and experiences of parenting mixed with like the gratitude, like Virginia said, and like you said, and I'm so glad you mentioned the family planning and building piece too. It sounds like Nate has resonated with that as well.
Yeah, that was a tough part of my journey was going through all the testing and in testicular cancer, you have to worry about sperm banking and when you I didn't go through chemo, so I didn't necessarily become infertile, but the treatments that I underwent did cause secondary infertility, and I've been reading recently that testicular cancer can also lead to miscarriages. And so you never know what until you research all these topics, you don't know, you know, that that's the reason why, you just get frustrated with the process. Like we lost several to miscarriages and we did welcome my son back in 2023. So there was a lot of the unknown was the most difficult part. And that took over 2 years to happen and of trying and frustration and so a lot of guys that I work with through the cancer foundations that I'm a part of, you know I I I reiterate that to them. You gotta focus on this. You might have to go an IVF or IUI route to to have another kid, and so that's definitely a thing that comes up all the time. And then the other thing I wanted to say on this question was, the pains are a long lasting effect for me. I still have all these pains, but we make it a point every night we play a game called Coffee Monster with my kids. I'm the coffee monster because I'm always drinking coffee, but I've always said to them, no matter how much pain I'm in, I'm always going to play that game with them, and so we make a point of that, regardless of my situation.
Thank you, Nate. That's sweet to hear about the coffee monster. And similar to what Lisa said with the family planning and the family building after a cancer diagnosis, like you don't know what you know until you need to know it. And I'm sure so much of what you said about trying and continuing to have that family building aspect and it going a different route than you had initially planned with IVF and IUI, miscarriages, all of the things. Thank you for being so open and sharing about that.
Um, so thanks to Nate and Lisa for bringing that up because I think what's important is part of the journey, is beginning to accept that your family and the way that your parent and your parenting journey might actually look a little bit different than you anticipated going into it. So that's some of the healing and things that I've had to work through. Um, for me, the late effects are pretty well documented from a clinical perspective. But I think how that compounds when you're a parent is something that um, is not something that is caught. Sorry, you guys are hearing my very needy kibble in the back. Um, so I have a lot of issues, physical late term effects that I deal with that are ever evolving. Um, some of that like includes the fatigue, but I have a lot of different pain and mobility and other things that kind of are always shifting and changing on me. But I think although that's something that's known, we don't really capture what that looks like when you're up in the middle of the night with a kid 4 times because they have a fever, or you're having to mix formula and bottle feed and what that is, and or carrying or toting around your extra like 10 pounds of car seats and to soccer practice. So when you're trying to heal and you're trying to get better, even once you're in survivorship, these are things that you're going about your daily life and they really compound. So I always think of this as like being a group of people that are just meant to like change the world because you're have superpowers and you're just doing something really important. And I think at the end of the day, like what I hear from everyone on the panel is that you're just a parent, right? So you're going to keep showing up no matter what happens, and that's what we do.
Totally. Thank you, Tracy. Um, I think a lot of what you said flows nicely into our next question, which is what is a misconception you all think cancer muggles or non-cancer people have about parenting after cancer that you would like to address?
I can go first. I feel like sometimes people assume parents who are navigating cancer are either like these strong warriors or like completely broken and can't do anything. And I think people need to understand that the reality is we're most of the time I feel like somewhere in between that, or that both of those can exist at the same time. And in a lot of ways they kind of have to. Um, Especially when I was going through treatment and my kids were so young, they understood I was going to the doctor all the time, but they didn't understand what that meant. We use the word cancer from day one, but it wasn't until their ages now where they understand more of what that means. And so I think that the practice of kind of holding both of those and knowing that you can have moments that are really hard, even 7 years out, um, and also have moments where or days that feel good and like I'm just doing normal parent things and cancer slips my mind for a few moments. So I think that's a big misconception that there isn't like a middle ground or that both of those can't exist at the same time. And that's something that's very real in my everyday life. Um, but yeah, sorry, I don't even like to use the word normal, which is why I went like this, because there really is no normal to go back to. We're forever changed. So if that's also how you're feeling, you're not alone in feeling that way too, because I know for me, I'll forever be changed. And that's not just because of the scans I have to still get and the medical appointments I still have to get, but it's going to be the emotional toll that that all took and the lasting physical kind of things and scars that won't go away. So
Gosh, I agree with that, Lisa, too. And my first thought with that question is like, when you hear cancer, like my first thought was like my son. And I think that's what's hard as a parent is like, and I had all the Amazon cart, I had it full because I had the scan and that horrible 5 days of waiting. I like knew it was cancer, like just like let's go on, let's get it done. And it was like all the books, like Cancer Hates Kisses. And then I was like, okay, let me prepare my son. Chemo was all about my son. And then I think what's really important for people to know is like it's that after treatment. It's that like, okay, you're done with chemo. And then you just like you are just broken open because you're able to like feel and experience what you just went through. And so there's this space where you finally have space, and can other people hold that space for you? Of like, this is now not to be selfish, but like I gotta heal. Like I gotta to heal from what I've been through and like experience and focus on me and not my husband and my son and even my dog. I had guilt about like my dog, like I don't get to walk him. So it's like I think that is imperative, that like giving people that space and allowing yourself to heal, because you will feel broken open. I still have moments. I mean, I'm like a lobster. I feel like I'm molting and I'm healing sometimes, but there's still these moments of like I have to have a scan right after you start school. Why can't this just be about him going to kindergarten? And I think giving myself peace and grace too.
I think one thing that I struggled with was just, I didn't want, I don't want to have to rely on other people. My wife worked the entire time. Didn't have a ton of PTO. But my mom was, you know, there with me on a lot of appointments and such. But then I had my daughter. She was 2, so I had to figure out how to, you know shuffle her around. I had a great support group, so I had people who were like, hey, just drop her off. We're do that, and you know the hard part for me, parenting wise on that was, I don't I don't have that time with her. I'm spending all this time on appointments and healing and the things, and so it was trying to figure out how to navigate that. And still, when I go to doctor's appointments these days, there's those questions like, why do you have to go to the doctor so often? And and so that's where it becomes tough to navigate, especially with with kids that ask way too many questions. So.
Um, For me, I think it's been said a lot about how like survivorship is sort of beginning, right? Like there's no real end. And people think you just go back to whatever it is after you've put cancer neatly in some box. But I think the reality is that there's never going back um, to who you were as a person after cancer, and there's also no going back to who you were as a parent. It's just fundamentally different. And in a lot of ways, you're just better. Because I find that I'm more like present and prioritizing what actually matters, and I'm raising my girls with this understanding in life that a lot of people don't get. And honestly, I've just learned to like let go of a lot of stuff as well. And no one is flawless. I also like have horrible days, like emotionally and physically, but really this idea that cancer comes to a halt and you resume your previous life is such a big misunderstanding of what navigating survivorship as a parent looks like, because you kind of just learn to build a new life. And I think it's also a much more intentional life for your kids too.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing. You each brought up so many great points, and I feel like something key that everyone touched on was that cancer changes you to your core, and even if active treatment is over, cancer never ends. The experience has changed you to your core. It stays with you. And this misconception that people have that when treatment ends, cancer ends and life goes back to quote unquote normal, is really inaccurate. And especially as lots of time passes after cancer and physically you might look healthy, great. You might not look like a quote unquote typical person with cancer. Um, it can be really hard for non-cancer people to understand that those impacts are real and that they are lasting and they're not just physical, they are emotional as well. And I love, Tracy, what you brought up about, having to lug the extra 10 pounds of car seats in and out of the car. And I mean, those are big things that are annoying for people who haven't had cancer to experience. And then when you do add on the cancer experience and the pain, the neuropathy, the fatigue, all of the pieces, it makes something like that much more challenging and inconvenient. I think Lisa had mentioned this briefly, but as your children learn and grow, their curiosity about cancer might deepen. So, what are some questions that your kiddos have asked you about cancer? And what is it like to answer those questions?
Um, For me, my youngest, because she was only 4 months old when I was first diagnosed, she really doesn't know a version of me before cancer, before I had scars, before my speech was very different. Today, now that she's closer to 5, she's just starting to notice or ask questions about more of my visible scars. And I think that that's kind of something that's not, no one really prepares you for, is having to explain cancer on their timeline, which as they hit a new cognitive stage and different appropriate language changes, you have to kind of evolve with them. And in some ways, as a parent, that can be a little re-traumatizing because it was already a disaster that I had to tell my older child at the time that I was, that I was sick. So for the younger one, it's been an interesting experience because you're just reliving it in a different way now. But my oldest was different because when I was growing up, I had a parent that was sick. And I saw some people writing in the chat about carrying some different trauma and how that's dually impacted you. And I've had a very similar experience because my oldest, I was very fearful of how that was going to ultimately play a role in her life. And initially, when she was 4, it was about the bandages, the feeding tube, being unable to speak. I was really concerned about the trauma, but for her, it was more of like a logistical thing. She was interested in playing doctor and the medical stuff and understanding what was going on. Now that she's 9, I just find her to be such an incredibly empathetic person, and she's also just open to people's experiences and awareness of others and disabilities that they may have. And for that, I'm really proud that she's turned out that way because I was caring so much and so overly concerned about how it was going to impact her. It's different now that we're stretching into, she just turned 9, and 9 is this weird place to be where you're setting up confidence and anxiety and trajectory into teen years. And so it's something that I just continue to watch and be especially careful of is like making sure she's not suppressing her own emotions to in order to protect me as the sick parent. And so um, I think it's a good question because it's just we're constantly evolving in the way that you need to communicate and matching and how they where they are developmentally.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of bounce off of that because I have similar feelings. I feel like, again, my kids were 3 and 1.5 when I was diagnosed. So I think my 1.5-year-old really spent the whole time trying on my like head wraps and things. I have so many pictures just being goofy with like the various things he would find around the house. So he was having a grand old time. He had no idea what was going on. But my 3-year-old would ask the typical kind of like toddler young kid questions like, is it contagious? Will I get cancer when I'm older too? He even asked, like, are you done now? When we kind of celebrated my last chemo, things like that. For a while, he was even like, if I said I was going to Boston, he would ask, like, oh, for cancer. So it was even like the place he had kind of like put together that Boston was related to my cancer experience. But I feel like as they've gotten older, the questions they ask definitely became a bit deeper. I think it's opened the door for us to have more conversations about emotions. And I feel like I have learned that it's not about having the perfect response for them. It's more about creating that safe space to have those discussions and for them to know that they can feel curious about it, that they can feel scared, they can feel even angry about it. And I think processing those emotions in real time, because I'm, like I said, I may be 7 years out, but I still get really scared around my scan times. And so it opens up the door to have those conversations. And like Tracy said, I think it really does increase their kind of emotional empathy in terms of being able to communicate and notice maybe when I'm having a tough time. And my younger son actually, one of his friends was diagnosed with leukemia when he at the end of kindergarten. So there were a lot of like parallel talking, and he would ask questions like, oh, she's getting the medicine like you did. So he kind of came at it later, obviously, because he was so young at first. But I think it like Tracy said, it opened up their empathy and almost their awareness of it in the world around them too, and not just with me and my experience. Yeah, so.
And I must, I'll go ahead, Nate.
Oh, no worries. I just, I've still struggled with this just because, my daughter, mine's testicular cancer, so it's a touchy subject, So I haven't ever been able to explain to my daughter like what I went through. Sometimes like if we're swimming or something, she'll see my scars on my stomach from my surgeries and she'll ask about them. But mostly we and this is where Bright Spot comes in to help with that as we grow older here. But she knows that I'm sick, and that's usually what we go with. But then now she knows it as charity. So she's like, oh, you're working with you're working with your charity, or you need to go travel for charity. And so that's kind of been a nice thing to share with her over time now is that she sees the the nice the nice part, the support that goes around. Yeah, she's like, oh, I want to see the people on your phone calls and stuff like that, and really support me through that. But I still struggle with that, and then the other part that I struggle with is the guilt of like, you know, I want to be around for them for forever, and I want to make sure that I'm not, that I'm continuing on my path of treatments so that I'm not risking that. But also the guilt from, what can I pass on to them? What is genetic? And I'm like, did I do the right thing of having the second kid? Am I putting him at a higher risk of going through the same thing as that? And so that's where the mental health stuff comes in, and that's where it's very important. And I've started trying to focus on that as well.
I just wanted to say really quick too, it's okay if your kid doesn't ask questions because my son, like he asked a ton during treatment, but he doesn't ask questions. Like, so at first he knows like, once a month you have your cancer group. He knows that because he gets to watch a movie, with daddy. He gets to watch a movie with my husband. But it's like, for me, like there was people over at my in-laws' house and they were changing and the electrician was like, yeah, my wife's going through cancer. And then my son was like, my mom had cancer. Like she had cancer in her stomach, and so like he's absorbing it. And so it just like Tracy said though, it kind of catches you. I think for me, it's just allowing myself to be completely caught off guard. And you're right, it is traumatizing because you're like, it is a Friday night and I'm putting you to bed and you're asking like if I was scared I was going to die of cancer sometimes. And so that moment, it's like just, whoo, let me have a breath and then we'll go into it. And like he told his preschool teacher, like he's so special because his mom thought that she was going to die and she just wanted more time with him. And so it's also like he's one of those kids that's just like, that's his way of processing and absorbing. He's 5 now, so I'm sure. And I just have my port scar. He'll joke. He would hit. I don't know if you've ever had pain of a 3-year-old hitting you as hard as they can with a port in. Like it is beyond belief. And so it's jokes now. And like we ate fries. Like I could only eat like white carbs and cheese during chemo, and like he loves that we ate fries, in his bed. And so it's those moments too, but they, like Tracy said, they do catch you off guard.
Yeah, thank you all so much. You all brought up so many amazing, wonderful points. Um, we have about 7 minutes until we pause for some Q&A with the audience. But the last question I wanted to be able to ask all of you is, what words of support would you like to share with other parents who are navigating parenting and cancer?
Um, for me, as your kids are not watching you be sick. They're watching you fight for your life and choose them every single day. And that is the most powerful thing I think a parent really can teach is that even when you have everything that is working against you, you're still showing up. And that's something pretty powerful. So even on your hard days and when you're getting knocked down and when you're not the best or the parent that you want to be or the best patient or anything, you're really showing them that what it means to show up and show up for them.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I would want other parents to know is that you don't have to do this perfectly. Um, Cancer already asks so much of you physically, mentally, emotionally, all the things. And your children don't need a perfect parent. They need just what you can give them at the time. They're so resilient. They need you, they need your love, they need your honesty, they need your conversations, your little silliness when you feel up to being silly. So give yourself grace for sure. I feel like there's a lot of like guilt and grief and exhaustion and all of those things when it comes to navigating cancer with kids, but I feel like even on your hardest days, like Tracy just said, your kids are learning something from you when they're seeing you be resilient, when they're seeing you go through these hard things and still waking up the next day and showing up for them in the best way that you can on that day. I know I put it in the chat already, but there were days literally where I would just become a racetrack for their Hot Wheels cars because I needed to have my heat packs all over me from the Neulasta bone pain. But you know what? They would laugh and giggle and have so much fun with that. And to them, I was still playing with them in the way that I could, and it didn't make any difference. So I feel like your kids are still going to learn from you based off of what you're going through. And ultimately, I know I said this at the beginning, but you're not alone. Unfortunately, but fortunately, there's a lot of people out there that get what you're going through. And I think it's organizations like this that show you that. But there's a lot of people trying to figure this out, and we're all just doing our best. So even just being here at this event and listening in and is doing something for yourself, which ultimately is doing something for them.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was gonna say as well, is that you're not alone. The support groups out there are just fantastic. Find one, that you know maybe is disease specific, or age specific, like stupid cancer is. You know, if you fit into the young category there, but then Bright Spot has the parenting resources here. So that and you don't have to be just married to one. As you navigate your and you know navigate life, and parenting. You find what works for you. Keep at it, and see what helps you the most. And there's just so many organizations out there that are just so helpful and that have helped me. So just seek it out.
And the last thing, just you're so loved by those little people. I think like even like survivorship and then like when your hair goes back and you just have really bad, you're grateful for the hair, but you're like, this is a hot mess. Like you just feel so, I don't know, just awful. Like you're so loved. And then I remember talking to my son's pediatrician and my oncologist, like, is lymphoma, genetic, will he get it? And they were both like, no, like, no, this just happens. And my oncologist, I remember, I'll never forget, she was like, don't let your anxiety become his anxiety. And I've just really held on to that, applying to all things, like even like college. And is he going to be able to pay, afford college? And I'm so glad I'll be alive for, college for him. And so that's really like been a steer for me of like, don't let like his cancer journey of his mom having cancer at 3 is not mine. And that's okay.
Thank you all so much. I know that everything that you said resonated with each other just by watching all the head nods and just seeing everything in the chat. So thank you all so much for your openness, your honesty, um, just the words that you chose to share with everyone today. It was incredibly powerful to hear from all of you. And thank you for sharing your perspectives and your stories.
Yes, thank you all. This has been so incredible. We do have a couple of questions. The first is a question wondering if any of you dealt with a prior illness before or during your diagnosis. This person was diagnosed with epilepsy years before her diagnosis, and that was extremely hard.
Um, I Mine's kind of before and after. So I undiagnosed. I'm still working on my diagnosis right now, but I possibly have multiple sclerosis. So I had a brain scan back in 2012, that found a few spots, and I kind of ignored it, didn't go to a specialist, did all the wrong things. And then just recently, because of these groups that I'm involved in, I've really learned to advocate for myself. And so I pushed for a new brain MRI, found some more spots back in February. And so in a month, I'm going back to neurology and seeing if that's going to be my ultimate diagnosis. So I really kind of had that before and after, and so we're trying to trying to navigate that as well.
That has to be hard.
This is more mental illness, but I always struggled with anxiety my whole life, specifically health anxiety, which is pretty ironic. But I, for so long, pushed off going on any kind of medication. I don't even really know why, but it wasn't until after my cancer diagnosis that obviously my anxiety ramped up quite a bit. And I finally leaned into going on a medication, and that was just I was starting to feel physical symptoms of anxiety. And I think if if that resonates with you and you haven't kind of if you're like me and you've steered clear of kind of anxiety meds for one reason or another, it helped me so much. And so that's kind of my 2 cents there in terms of more of a mental illness.
Thanks, Lisa. Another question is about work. Wondering how you all managed cancer, treatment, parenting, all the stuff while working.
I wish we had 5 hours. I am a therapist and I ironically work with kids and teenagers. And that was, I need to write an article anyway, just to keep it brief, but I just chose complete transparency. So that was hard to even navigate. Like you're diagnosed with cancer, and one week you're telling your, office staff, and then you're telling clients you have cancer every single hour because your body will change. And then the fear of like them asking questions you weren't ready to hear, like, are you going to die? And you're like, gosh, I hope not. And so I decided to not do like short-term disability. And I worked. I mean, I took off, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and then a deer when your white blood cells would drop, I would take off. And I don't say that out of nobility or toughness. I say that I needed something outside of my cancer. I needed to be Virginia, separate as a mom, separate as, cancer, that I just really needed that. And then to focus on other people's problems was really nice. But I had horrible diarrhea and that made life really complicated. But I think being a mom, like, pumping at work, postpartum, like anxiety, like that really prepped me and revved me up to just like it's awful. And I think it's horrible. And then the pacing is better. Like I have more stamina, but there's still moments I think where it's like, whoo, this is too much nervous system. My nervous system is different, post cancer. And so it's just a whole different, I know we need a whole other section on I don't know how to navigate. You navigate it 1 second at a time. And Lord, I don't know. Like it is a trip.
For me, when I was going through breast cancer, I thought, okay, I'll just if I say something, I'll tell my immediate supervisor and we'll just keep this inside. And then um, when I got diagnosed with tongue cancer, it's pretty clear that that was not happening because I was sort of forced. People would know this about me. Um, and I think that that's something that's filled with a lot of privilege is to be able to speak about any diagnosis or illness that you're facing because that comes with risk. And it was something that I was really nervous about. And I think that it's something that for yourself, you have to like search if and how you're going to disclose these kinds of things. And there's a lot of really great resources out there for doing that. But I also had to be able to continue to work because we don't have systems that are set up in this country for being able to navigate these kinds of things. And if I didn't have childcare, I could not afford to keep my daughter in daycare, but I couldn't lift her and pick her up physically at home because of what I was going through. And so I had to work to be able to afford daycare to have her in there so that she wasn't exposed to what was going on as much at home. And when I think back about how I managed to kind of keep it all together and do any of it, I'm actually not sure. I would take a nap and shower before they got home so that I did not look or, I had enough energy to sort of get through that little window of time for dinner and all of that. So I think that there's a lot of work that we have to do in this space to better support people in general. I think that there's a lot of great resources out there for how to kind of disclose that if you are working. So yeah, just something to kind of keep in mind because that's something I think we all struggle to navigate.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm sorry. I think there are a few questions we're just not going to have time to get to, so I apologize. But I do feel like a good ending question. This would be a great way to ground us as we leave. Is someone was wanting to know what are your proudest moments? So in parenting through cancer, this person is just kind of wanting to compile everyone's greatest hits to refer to on the dark days.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite memories was when I couldn't lift my daughter. The first time I got the lifter was actually Christmas Day, in that same year of 2020, after one of my surgeries. But before that, I was sitting in my recliner, and I couldn't move a whole lot, and she found a way to crawl up without t touching me and sit next to me and watch Frozen, with me, and so I have a picture of that moment, but I always think back to that moment as you know I was gonna be okay, and she was being able to navigate that in a special way.
That's really sweet, Nate. I also love this question. I think first and foremost, I know I've already brought this up, but I think I'm most proud of just the open communication that I made sure was important in our family from the get-go. And I think that that has only made our family closer and made my relationship with my kids stronger, that they can come to me and talk about anything. But also just those moments of getting a little creative, if you will, with parenting on those super hard days when you're in the thick of it. Like vividly remember making like a movie night or a movie day, sorry, like a big deal and made it feel really special, even though like in the back of my mind I had that guilt of like, oh my gosh, the amount of screen time these kids are getting today. But you know what? It's day 3 after my AC treatment, and I'm not gonna be able to do much of anything else. And instead, they saw it as this like special treat. So I think it's all about kind of trying to get creative with it and spinning things in a way, obviously depending on your kids' ages. Um, but I'd like to think, I mean, it would be so interesting to like flat out ask my kids now, looking back on those years, like what they remembered or what stood out to them. But I'd like to think that things didn't feel all that different, and that, we were still able to have fun moments even when I was feeling at my absolute worst.
Um, One of the things that sticks out for me as a parent is when after one of the first times my daughter's friends came over after I had gone through surgery, and I had just completed radiation, so I was very still like in a weird stunned kind of place. And my daughter, I overheard my daughter's friend ask her as I was coming up the stairs, "Hey, what happened to your mom's voice? Why does she speak so different?" And for me, my heart sank. And my daughter said, "Oh, she had cancer." And they just went on with their play and everything else that they were doing. And I thought she really handled that well and gracefully. And I could not have asked for anything better. And so it's just a good reminder.
And just really quick, we prepped my son like mommy will lose her hair, and it was exactly 2 weeks and like 2 days. And my husband shaved it, and my husband shaved his hair. He shaved my hair, and we're like, "Do you want to shave your hair?" And he was like, "No." But then he asked like, "Will you lose your eyes?" And that is like so dear to me. And I was like, "No, I'll never lose my eyes." And it was just the sweetest thing. And then he also said like I had cozy power, like so I mommies always have cozy power, like yep.
That is the sweetest. I love that. That's how we're ending. Y'all have cozy power. There you go. That's your superpower. Thank you again to all of you for being here. This is just Truly magical and lovely. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll follow up tomorrow. We'll get a recording of this. If you didn't have a chance to do the survey, I'll put that in the follow-up as well, as long as a link to some resources to Stupid Cancer and Bright Spot Network. Thank you all, and have a good rest of your day.